Aaron Nabus here, and on this Badass Holiday Show podcast episode, we welcome the writer and co-creator of the comic book, Baby Badass, David Schrader. David is a writer-filmmaker with deep roots in the LA alternative comedy scene, and he has an extensive background in stand-up, sketch, and improv. What makes this episode badass is that we offer not just one, but two interviews with him. The first one features my conversation with him from San Diego Comic-Con 2018, where we discussed the first arc of Baby Badass. The second one is from WonderCon 2019, where we talked about the second arc, Baby Badass Returns. That's right, Action Lab Danger Zone's cult favorite dystopian sci-fi grindhouse action comic book about a superhuman baby killing machine is back. While recently fully funded on Kickstarter, the campaign actually ends on April 18th, 2019. So if you support indie comics or are looking for something to spend some of your tax refund on, check it out. If you happen to miss the Kickstarter, check out babybadass.com in the near future or a comic convention where David Schrader will be at to get your copy. Thanks for coming on the show, David. And thank you, Holiday Show listener, for checking out this episode and continuing to support our mission to be the voice of independent creators. Hey there, fellow nerds and geeks. Welcome to the Holiday Show podcast. We are at San Diego Comic-Con 2018, and I'm joined by a comic book creator / writer, Mr. David Schrader. How you doing, David?
Pretty good. How you doing, Aaron?
And he's the creator of the comic book Baby Badass.
Yes.
Let me just read a little description that I found online about it. It's he didn't ask to be born.
That's the tagline.
Yeah, Baby Badass is an action comedy about an escaped military experiment gone wrong. A swift, brutal soldier clone-killing machine trapped inside the body of a baby. Together with Joey, the sweet, sexy waitress who saves him, they're on the run from the evil mother. It's an acronym.
It's a military organization to harness evolutionary resources.
Nice. In a world gone mad. There's 3 issues so far, and it's going to be collected into a trade paperback, right?
That's right. That about sums it up.
Sweet. So, yeah, David, we've been trying to get in touch and get on a podcast
for a little while.
Yeah. And we know each other through Ryland Grant, who's another stablemate at Action Lab.
Yeah, his book Aberrant just came out, and it's doing really well. Just got option to be a show. Yeah. And no, he's a really great guy.
And maybe we can sort of start with your sort of journey, your sort of start as a creator, your origin story, if you will.
Sure.
How were you as a kid? What were you into?
You know what? I liked comic books, and I read a lot of comic books, and but the thing I was really into was Peanuts for some reason. I love Charlie Brown books and Snoopy, and I had hundreds and hundreds of books. I still have them somewhere. And I love Charlie Brown. I love drawing. I was an artist. And I created my own comic book called Herman the Cat, and this like predated Garfield. It was just this like sarcastic kind of like smart ass cat, which is weird because I'm a dog person. I don't really like cats. So I drew my own comics kind of, and then as I got a little older, I would draw like Far Side type panels and things like that. But as far as superhero comics and stuff like that, I really kind of lost track a little bit. I started doing stand-up and writing more when I was a teenager, and when I moved to LA, I was 19, and I did stand-up, and I had an agent at 19, which was really bizarre because I think I was way too green to be doing anything like that. But at that time, comics was really not something that I kept up with.
So you're sort of comic and a comics creator.
A little bit, yeah. I did do comics and a stand-up, which was great. And I was a writer, and I had a film called NoHo back when I was like 24, and this was like the year after Clerks. And I remember being in New York at the IFFM, and this was the year after Clerks. They were looking for the next Clerks, and we had meetings at October and New Line and Miramax at the time, and it was like, whoa, it's really going to happen now. I'm 24, and like. Finally, I think I said it's finally going to happen, 24 years old, but it didn't go, and it's fine. And I worked on a bunch of other stuff, and Christy Stratton, which is one of my, she was my writing partner for a period of time. We did a film called Being Ozzy Osbourne. It was a spoof of being John Malkovich.
Nice.
And Spike Jonze said it was like the best spoof by far at the Independent Spirit Awards. And we had meetings all over town, so we started pitching other scripts. And so we had lots of meetings, lots of rewrites, and we wrote a couple really good scripts that I just, for one reason or another, that's the way it works. Like, they just don't get made. But we had meeting after meeting, and finally I was like, I just want to make my own things, and even if they're just short. So I kind of went alternative Hollywood and did a lot of like very, very offbeat little short films and satires and things like that. But comics kind of came back to me, especially with Baby Badass. It was just an idea that I couldn't shake.
How long were you a comedian for?
A comedian?
Yeah.
Well, probably from like age 19 to my early 20s, like 24. There's this one time where I was at the Laugh Factory, and it was hard, especially when you can't, like, I would be sick to my stomach all day until I got up on stage. Like, I couldn't eat all day. I would feel nauseous all day, and if finally you step foot on stage, and that all went away. But it wasn't worth it. Like, my stomach was always in knots. I really don't know how comics do it. But I was at the Laugh Factory, and I was getting ready to go on stage, and they're like, wait, Sam's here. And they're like, oh, Sam's here. And like right in front of me, Sam Kinison walks on stage. And I don't know if you're any older listeners remember Sam Kinison, but he was a huge star, wore a trench coat and screamed, and he just like burned the house down. People were screaming and like laughing and throwing things, and it was chaos. And then it was like, okay, now there's like a 20-year-old dry observational humorist is going to tell me, and it was just a bad set. But I can always tell people that, yeah, Sam Kinison opened for me one time.
That's interesting how that worked out.
Yeah, but I did that just for a little while, and then I got to improv. And improv I liked a lot more because it was very collaborative, which is interesting because that's how comics are, and I really enjoy collaborating with people. And improv was, you didn't have to remember your set. You didn't have to have 20 minutes of like stuff that I always worried about remembering like everything because I was a perfectionist that I shouldn't have been.
I have a bad memory, so I think improv would probably be more my style too.
Yeah, so that might have been part of it, and but improv is great because you just have to react and you just have to be in the moment and listen. And I was never the best listener, so I think it helped me listen more, and it helped me become a better writer.
Who were from some of your favorite comics that you followed, comedians?
The comedians?
Yeah.
It's funny. I met Seinfeld several times back in the day. Actually, when we were in high school, we went and saw him in Delaware, and we went backstage and hung out with him, got to meet him. It was really, really great. We're trying to convince him to come to our like high school to give a speech at the graduation. That didn't work out. But he was kind of an early influence, Larry Miller, and I mean, obviously, I like really kind of bizarre stuff sometimes, like Stephen Wright and who else am I thinking of? But just some of the guys that were a little non-traditional. Yeah, and then just all the National Lampoon stuff and things like that. Like I loved comedy movies, Fletch and Caddyshack and all that jazz.
Airplane.
Yeah, all of it. It's great. Like I have a photographic memory when it comes to comedy. My wife bitches about things sometimes because she goes, "Hey, you can't remember that we were supposed to meet someone for lunch on Saturday, but you can remember all the Simpsons dialogue." It's like, you're right. You're totally right.
She just has to tell. She has to just do your to-do list with jokes.
Yeah, well, it's bad because I told her that the brain's too full of like Seinfeld and Simpsons dialogue. Like I know all those shows when I used to tape them and just memorize them, but there's not enough room for like important stuff anymore.
Cool. I guess we can just go right into Baby Badass.
Sure.
We were talking a little bit earlier, and I remember at another panel that you were on, you said it took sort of 12 years to bring it to light.
Yeah, I hope people don't think it's going to be like some amazing opus that took 12 years because that's not quite the story. It was like me and my co-creator, Christian Horn, we kind of came up with the idea, who knows, there might have been some drinking involved. We just thought the idea of a baby kicking everyone's ass was a funny visual. So I think he wrote me a birthday card and had this baby on it, and eventually we said, why don't we try to develop this into something? And we did try to do a webcomic for a while, and it didn't take. Like he was a perfectionist too, and like he didn't like what he was doing, so he'd start over and we'd have to start from the beginning. And then he had a real baby. Him and his wife had a real baby, and they're like, I just don't have time for this. So eventually I hired an artist named Tim Larson. He's this guy who lives up in Northern California. He's got his own comic that just came out right now called Mayfield 8, and it's really cool, and they just had a successful Kickstarter. But his style kind of grabbed me. It was very raw, very grindhouse, and that's what the first issue is. The first issue some people get a little scared off because it's really over the top, violent. There's like a little bit of sex and violence and all this craziness and a lot of blood. But to me, it was almost like this is the beginnings of America. This whole comic is basically like the afterbirth of America. It's a new America, and it's set in the future. So year 2043. This girl finds this baby. You don't know who this baby is, and that's the kind of the crux of the story. Is like who is he? He needs to find out who he is. So we were able to have a lot of backstory because it took so long. We had a pitch for a series, and they just didn't find the right slot for it or something, and it couldn't go at the time. But for whatever reason, I felt like I need to have a comic. I need to actually have the story kind of spelled out because the pitch wasn't doing it. So to find Tim to be able to do the comic, and then Jason Martin at Action Lab, Danger Zone saw it, and he really liked it. He saw that there was some real potential for the backstory and something else that could really like come out of it. So I give him a lot of credit for taking the chance to do it. Unfortunately, we needed at the time 3 more issues to publish, and it took a year for each book. So from 2014 2018, it took that long to finally get it ready for publication. But it came out this year, and it's turned out to be like a really good experience and a little bit of a hit for Action Lab.
Cool. For those of our audience who are sort of comic book creators themselves or aspiring to be comic book creators, can you sort of maybe expand upon the process of how you got your book to Action Labs and all the way to production?
Yeah, it was just, there's something great about just having the book in hand. I did a self-publishing under Highbrow Comics, which is, is the only thing we ever done. I have a little production company called Highbrow, and we do short films and commercials and things like that. But it was really nice to hold it in my hand to see a physical copy, because I know you can do it digitally, but I really wanted to get it printed and have it. And so I took that printed copy and sent it to 6 or 7 different places. I really didn't know what I was doing. But one of the first to respond and respond enthusiastically was Action Lab. So I would say you have a book in hand. These days you don't need a book, maybe just 6 pages of some really strong art and have a really good synopsis of what your story is. And there's plenty of people looking for stuff now. So you send it in to these different publishers. If you have an agent or representative, that's even better. But go to cons too. One thing I've been learning about this is go to cons, talk to people. Try not to be overbearing. Just be yourself, be nice, be normal and friendly. And connections. A lot of it's connections. It's the same way in Hollywood.
That's how we met, through a mutual connection.
And it's good to know good people. If you're a nice person and you try to, I read other people's comics, and I try to post it on social media and talk about it and help publicize too, because you can all kind of help each other out.
Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to your book and your story, you've done 3 issues, and how much further have you sort of plotted everything out?
Pretty far, actually, because it was an open-ended idea for a series. I really saw the sandbox as something that was wide open. Mm-hmm. He's a 33-year-old super soldier. He's this experiment that went wrong. It's found by this girl in the desert. You find out it's the year 2043, and the future's totally screwed up. And he needs to find out who he is. And there's a secret that Joey, the main character, and Baby Badass, whose name is Alpha Omega, that's his soldier name, share. And that doesn't come out until Volume 2, which will be out in 2019. But there's something else in the story where she finds a talisman, which is this device called a Deja, that in the future, everything that you need to know is kind of on this device. People rely on it so much, kind of like our smartphones, plus Google, plus anything else you can imagine in the future, extrapolating it. And they all shut down. And then an asteroid is about to hit Earth, and they shoot a bunch of nukes at it, and it breaks up. And all the asteroids land all over Earth, and then all the nukes come down. So it wipes out about 90% of the population. So in the future, there's a 1% of the 10%, fighting for prominence in a corporate theocracy. So there's this whole political background, and even though it's this crazy story about this killer baby, he's not really a baby. And I really try to take it seriously. Part of my writing is always taking a really surreal or silly idea, but treating it really seriously. And I think you can come out of it with something different when you do that. It's not just one thing, it's not just another. It's something kind of in between. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why this story has kind of struck a little bit of a chord.
One thing that sort of fascinates me is that, the whole internet sort of makes the world a little bit smaller. I know Rylan has a lot of his his artists and letters and colors from other parts of the world. Right. How about yourself?
Well, with Tim, it's funny because now I look back, I found him on digital webbing, which I don't even know if it exists anymore.
I've heard some people reference that.
Right,
yeah.
but now, like on Facebook, there's a comics and artist connection group that I joined, and I've been lucky enough. I'm going to work on a book with Eric Esquivel, who just did a book called Border Town.
Okay.
That's relaunching DC's Vertigo, and he's amazing. And I met him through Meltdown. He taught a class there, and we're working on this book called Magic Mullet. And it's a one-off, and we may pitch it, but we may just like make one book for ourselves and then pitch it that way. But I was looking for artists, and I did it through the Facebook, and I got 100 responses for artists and colorists, and you can really pick someone that fits the style that you're looking for. Back in the day, I think it was probably a lot harder. I mean, you probably had to physically meet people and see their portfolio and stuff like this. Now it's like they'll send you their portfolio digitally, and you can go on any of these sites and check out their stuff, and it's really great. It's a great resource.
Yeah, I think the internet is beautiful. I mean, there's so many opportunities, and it's even more easier just to make those connections, like you said.
Yeah. No, it is, and I think it's a really good time. Although people talk about, oh, it's a bad time for comics. It's great for comic book movies, but for comics, I don't know. I know that I went into this with eyes wide open. That it's like I'm certainly not looking to make money out of it. It was more of like, I think we had an idea to show that's really funny and interesting and bizarre, and like people get a kick out of it. If you like Deadpool, or you like the Incredible Hulk, or you like Captain America, like he's a super soldier, but there's something else going on with this, and it's a little bit of a hybrid type of story. But I just wanted to get it out there, especially like once we were pitching it. I was like, man, I need to have something that really shows this. And so me and Christian have worked on it, and me and Tim have worked on it, and now we're lucky enough to bring on a new artist named Andy Taylor, and he did Bigfoot Sword of the Earthman art for Josh Henneman, and that's another Action Lab book. I don't know if you know Josh, but he's a great guy, and the book was great, but I'd never seen Andy's human characters. I'd only seen all these creatures he did, and they were great. But when I saw his human characters, like, wow, I really like this style. So we're excited to see where this is going to go for Volume 2, and I just want to keep telling this story because it's crazy, but it's kind of fun and interesting too. Mm-hmm.
So what do you do for your like regular 9 to 5?
I'm a copywriter / like a project manager for a company that does like Blu-ray, DVD development, and digital movies. So I'm kind of in the business, but not really. They also had produced a couple movies. One of the first movies I did for them was called Bloodline, and it was a horror film. It's kind of like Friday the 13th meets Memento. So it was kind of like a fractured timeline horror film. And that was cool, and Lionsgate released it, and then we did another film called Shadow People that didn't quite do as well, but those were the last two projects I did that weren't on my own type of stuff. They kind of stopped doing that, and I have to find the time at home at night to write and to work on this stuff.
Yeah, it's funny. On the way over here, we were talking, and we sort of brought up our friend Terry Mayo.
Yeah,
and we were. I was complaining. Well, I wasn't complaining, but I was just saying that I didn't have enough time to pursue other projects or to start another project or to even start writing a comic book. And then David says that he just met Terry. And for those of our audience who doesn't know Terry, he works as a nurse. He has 6 kids with the 7th one on the way. And he's
That's
still
7, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, 7, and he still finds time to write some kick-ass comic books.
Yeah, he does the Wicked Righteous for Alterna, and they're really good. And he's going to be the go-to now when someone says I don't have time. I just say TM or Terry Mayo because the guy is inspirational. Like, and he writes some really great stuff, and he's productive.
Yes.
And Andy's he's a big family man. Like, so it's amazing.
Yeah,
There's no excuse really.
No excuses. So you won't ever hear me complain ever again.
No, it's okay to complain a little bit, but we can always come back around and say, hey, just look at Terry.
Exactly.
This is cool.
But when do you find time to do your writing for comic books?
It's a lot of times it's on the weekend. I'll say, okay, on Sunday I'm going to really set aside some time. And I know that writers are supposed to say, hey, writers write every day, and just you get older. Sometimes it's hard. It's hard to do that, and I go in spurts sometimes. My writing technique is a little outside the box. It's a lot of times it's just like I'll get on a roll and I'll write a lot. I can't necessarily force myself to do it sometimes because I find that stuff to be generally garbage. Like, it's not anything that I would use. But when I am like rolling, then I want to keep doing it, and then I sort through that stuff later. I'm bad at outlining. Part of the reason I wanted to work with Eric was because he taught a class on Dan Harmon's Story Circle, which I was like, this is made for me. I got to learn this and learn to really like get some tight structure and make it make sense, because my stuff sometimes tends to go in directions where the character or where something kind of crazy is happening, and I just want to explore that as opposed to like sticking to something that's going to like hit the points.
Well, I guess we can sort of explore that, how you got your initial, I guess, instruction and how to get to organize your writing for comic books.
A lot of it is just, I mean, look, I was a big Bugs Bunny fan when I was a kid, and I think the craziness of those Looney Tune cartoons has kind of colored my outlook on like my writing, and it can seem to just go in a lot of different directions sometimes. But part of what I need to do is rein it in. So I don't have a problem like going out there. I need to rein it in. So my whole thing has always been usually comedy. I love comedy, and I love like you know, kind of like skewed comedy. But like I love Kids in the Hall, Mr. Show, things like that. Mm-hmm. And now I just seem to like intellectual sci-fi, like the Alex Garland stuff recently, and you know, like Black Mirror, and those things. Like something about that speaks to me. So if I can combine comedy and like dark sci-fi, mm-hmm. it's usually right in the wheelhouse.
How about, like you mentioned, Meltdown Comics? You took a class over there?
Yeah, Eric taught a class there, and there's a great story. One time, like he would always bring in these guests, you know, and it was really cool to meet people from the industry, and they would gladly talk to you. But he was in the restroom washing his hands, and like in walked Mark Wade. He's like, "Are you Mark Wade?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I'm teaching a class here. Would you mind like talking to the class?" He's like, "Sure, no problem." He came in and talked for like 45 minutes, and it was just really like instructional to like hear from a guy like that about the business and the ins and outs. And that's the kind of class that Eric did. It was very loose, but it was also like a lot of information. And it's also his experiences too. And Meltdown was a great place, and I came in kind of late. I'm not going to pretend like I was there from the beginning, because again, like when I was in my 20s, I was just concentrating on making films, and I wasn't even in the comic world as much. Mm-hmm. So I kind of missed the heyday of that. But I came in late, and the next thing you know, it was being shut down. I think
rest in peace, Meltdown.
Day. Yeah.
Speaking of Meltdown, you will be in a panel. Today's Friday, actually, of San Diego Comic-Con, and tomorrow's Saturday.
Yeah.
You're going to be in a panel with a bunch of other people that you sort of
Ryland
know.
Grant's doing created at Meltdown panel. That's right.
Meltdown
I'm doing the Action Lab panel at 1, mm-hmm. and then that's the Action Lab Creators Spectacular, and then Ryan's created at Meltdown panel at 5. So I'll try to contribute my little part of that, but I'm certainly not going to overspeak. I
should be there to record it.
Oh, cool.
So maybe I'll tack it on at the end of this interview as a sort of
right.
segue from your interview talking about Meltdown and to the Meltdown panel.
Right.
So because I think it's like a really important thing to sort of connect together.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Now, in terms of your comic book, Baby Badass, and maybe some other projects that you have going on, do you have any other projects that you can tell us about that's like not secret?
Oh, yeah. Well, the last short film I did was a thing called Back to the Bad, Breaking to the Future. Uh-huh. And as you can probably infer, it's Back to the Future, Breaking Bad mashup. It's probably the craziest mashup that's out there.
Yeah.
It ends on a very bizarre, some would say probably twisted note. I won't tell people what that is, but if you want to check it out, Highbrow, Hybrau, is our little company, and we have our YouTube channel. There's a lot of shorts on there, and Back to the Bad is the latest one. But we've done stuff like reading Game of Thrones, which is, you know, you've seen all the videos where people are watching Game of Thrones. Like, you've seen people...
Oh, like reaction videos.
Reaction videos. Yeah. This was just basically a guy reading Game of Thrones, but the excitement of actually reading it. So it's kind of a love letter to reading. So there's kind of weird little things like that. But yeah, we do shorts like that all the time. I probably have like 3 or 4 different things that we're trying to cut together. I have a website that we're going to launch later this year called Hilo Flicks, which is kind of a streaming service spoof. Uh-huh. And it's just an online thing for little shorts, probably under 3 minutes. So commercials, shorts, infomercials, political ads, things like that, just kind of mashed up a little bit like a Channel 101, mm-hmm. Channel 101, which is Dan Harmon's thing. So it's kind of like a low rent version of that. But, you know, the way I look at the internet is real estate, and you kind of have to have your own little corner of that and develop it. Because in the end, I always feel like you got to have content, you got to be like creating. And my whole thing about working is I hate working, got to do it, but if I'm not creating at the same time, if I'm not doing that on the side, then I feel like I'm just, kind of swimming in place. And as long as I'm creating, I feel like satisfied.
Cool. I guess we'll come back to Baby Badass in a little bit, but I kind of want to go into our thunder round, sort of our off the beaten path set of questions.
All right.
I guess we'll start off with we were talking about Rylan a little bit earlier, and me and Rylan talk about doing karaoke every once in a while.
Okay.
So if you were to close down the karaoke joint, it's 2 a.m. You get the last song. What's that last song that you're gonna bring the house down with?
I think these days it'd probably have to be Ring of Fire.
Ah, interesting.
I think I could try to pull that off, but I'm not going to do it here. You have to see it at the karaoke bar.
Awesome. I assume you're a big Star Wars fan?
I am. I'm not like the biggest,
okay.
but I loved them as a kid. I got to admit, I was not a big fan of the middle Lucas ones.
Uh-huh.
Although I think I'm starting to appreciate them a little bit on the edges because I didn't even know they advanced the story. Honestly, I was so kind of dumbfounded by how bad I thought they were at the time.
Yeah.
My wife, it's funny because she loves them because those are the first ones she saw.
Got it.
So I've recently had to get her into watching the original good ones.
Yeah.
And she kind of I don't know. It's tough, but I'm trying to get her to go in order. And I think there's things in that maybe I could pull from and say, okay, well, I guess this advances this story. I didn't even know how they ended the third one. I'm trying to think because isn't Leia born in the last number 3, right?
Yeah.
Is that Revenge of the Sith or I don't even know the name of it.
I lose count. I think I may have blocked those from memory.
So you did the same thing. But no, and I like the new ones and I like the side stories. I actually loved Rogue One.
Yeah,
and,
Rogue One was awesome.
I thought it was great because boy, they really captured that feel of the first one,
Mm-hmm.
but it felt like a real movie to me, more so than maybe some of the other Star Wars.
Well, the reason I bring up Star Wars was because my question was going to be, if you were a sort of apprentice or a Padawan, who would you want to be an apprentice or Padawan to? Either a Sith or a Jedi?
Oh, Jedi, for sure.
And which one?
Well, it's got to be Obi-Wan, right?
Right.
I mean, that's
my pick.
That's got to be.
Yeah.
That's got to be.
Yeah.
That's the way I see myself
Uh-huh.
in an idealized version.
Nice. If you
and also we did a movie once, a short film with my friend Bennett Jones, who does an amazing Harrison Ford, by the way. So actually, we do have a bunch of Star Wars stuff on the Highbrow channel.
Uh-huh.
Check it out. It's outtakes from Star Wars, and he does an amazing Harrison Ford. Really funny stuff, but I played Liam Neeson in this one, and it was Harrison Ford and Liam Neeson in a thing called Absconded, because they've always been in these movies where people get kidnapped. And
That's true.
There's a scene where Harrison Ford's I've been a little busy in a movie called Star Wars Episode 7. Maybe you've heard of it. And then Liam Neeson says, I was in Episode 1, and he's like, I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that. So yeah, I have a little bit of Star Wars in those things too.
Nice. You're wearing a NASA shirt.
Yes, I'm pretending that I have nerd credentials.
If you were to sort of plan a trip to Mars, to be the first person to go there to help, I guess, terraform it,
yes.
to do some exploration for us, who would be the 4 other people you would want to take with you?
4 other people?
Yeah.
Got to take my wife, one. That's my wife, Alejandra Schrader. She's an amazing chef, celebrity chef. She could cook. She could have these intellectual discussions. She's great. She's a great companion. So she's number 1. Number 2, Obama, because I think he was a really good leader, especially now. It's very clear how much he was. And then I got 2 more, right?
2 more.
2 more. That's a tough question, Aaron. I really don't know. I'd have to think about that.
Do you have any
one.
pets you want to bring?
Oh, my dog Broly, for sure. Does pets count? Then? Okay,
Broly?
so Broly.
Is it
our
named
dog.
after Dragon Ball Z? Or?
No, I don't even know that.
Okay.
He came with the name. He's a rescue, but
Okay.
he's a 100-pound sweetheart of a beast. But yeah, so my wife, my dog, Obama, and then and then Gal Gadot, of course, because she's awesome and she's Wonder Woman. So there, we rounded out our 4.
Cool.
That's right.
If you could have dinner with anybody,
And Gadot, is it Gadot?
I think it's good.
I think it's Gadot. I think people say Gadot, and she's like, that's not right. I think it's Gal Gadot.
I think you might be right.
All right. Sorry.
If we see her here, we'll ask her.
There she is.
No. Hey, excuse me.
I think you got someone better to interview.
If you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive or fictional, who would it be, and where would you take them to eat?
Dead or alive? You really didn't prepare me for these questions. This truly is like a lightning round. Dead or alive? If you said fictional too?
It could be fictional too.
Well, I'm going to give you a boring answer. I'm going to say Abe Lincoln. Because I'm going to ask him how he kept all that shit together.
That'd be an interesting conversation.
And we're going to take him to dinner?
Yeah.
Maybe the best steakhouse in town.
Yeah.
He'd been dead a long time. Could use a good meal. It's a bad answer, I know, but if I had more time to think about it, I would have given you an excellent answer. And but it's I don't know why Abe Lincoln. It's kind of a go-to.
That's fine.
Remember Happy Gilmore when like Abe Lincoln was in the sky at the end, like just randomly?
Yeah.
They never explained it.
Oh, have you ever watched the Abe Lincoln, the Vampire Hunter movie?
I watched a little bit of it. Was that a graphic novel first?
I believe so, or a book,
It was a book or something. And I heard it was actually pretty good.
It was interesting. Yeah.
Was the movie good?
It was okay. I watched bits and pieces of it
myself. I just
myself.
found it to be so like out there, but I shouldn't say that because look at the shit I'm writing.
If I gave you $1 million, what would you do with it?
Half to some really, really, well-meaning charities, and the other half, we would probably retire, go somewhere, maybe live by the lake in the country. I could write. We could have a garden, and just be able to do what I want to do like that.
If you could go back in time, and it's a one-way trip.
Yeah.
Which time period would you go to?
One-way trip. That's a really good question. Although I think it's kind of crazy, maybe like medieval times, just to kind of experience it, and then I can get out, right?
No.
Oh, I got to stay there?
It's a one-way trip.
Oh, one-way trip.
Yep.
So I'd go to the future.
Well,
Can I go to the back? I can only go back?
My original question was to go to the back, but I'll...
Oh, no. If I can only go to the back.
Yeah.
If I can only go back. God. Well, I'd have to go kill Hitler. I'm sorry, that's it. Like, I would go kill him before he becomes Hitler.
Cool.
I mean, that's got to be the most positive change you could make, right?
It's one of them for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. There we go.
I guess
ladies and gentlemen, I'd have no qualms about killing Hitler, no matter how old he was. If it's Hitler, it's Hitler. Okay? There's no moral like gray area with that. It's not like, oh, well, he's only like 12. So it's Hitler. You're gonna take him out.
You're gonna do a minority report on him.
Absolutely. Well, we know what the truth is. So yeah.
I guess
questions are killing me here.
I guess last question will be, if you were president of the United States, what artwork would you hang up in the Oval Office?
What artwork would I hang up in the Oval Office? So, there's a really good cover of Baby Badass that I think would be something that could go well in there. It's like it's the Napoleon painting variant cover. Joey's on a squirce because in Baby Badass the only animals that survive are these offspring of very patient squirrels and very horny horses called squirces. And she's on a squirce and Baby Badass is behind her and they're like looking towards the future. The real answer would probably be some Norman Rockwell shit.
Okay. I guess we can go back to that'd be awesome. Good. That's a good segue to going back to Baby Badass.
Right. Out now from Action Lab Danger Zone.
There you go. Seeing as how you sort of have a film background.
Yeah.
I mean, is there plans to make Baby Badass into a live action? Or
it's weird. Like, I don't know how much you're supposed to talk about it or not, but there are some talks about like possibly making like an animated type of series. So that's exciting because it kind of was made for that. I've talked to people about it, and I've said things like, really, this could be like the closest thing to a Rick and Morty that's not a ripoff of Rick and Morty. You know what I mean? Like, you could obviously try to do a watered down Rick and Morty, and people see right through that. But this has been around a while, and that world, that post-apocalyptic comedy is kind of ground that hasn't been tread very often. I mean, I describe this sometimes, or it's been described as Mad Max meets Idiocracy, and I love Idiocracy. I find it funny to like kind of explore a world like that. But also in Baby Badass, the surface world is more like a Star Wars. It's very dry, angry, violent. and then the way underground is the resistance, and they literally are like miles underground, and it's very like cool, calm, and that's where like the intelligentsia has gravitated towards. And even though they're somewhat ineffectual, they are well-meaning, and so he becomes basically a mercenary for like the way underground. And so you have a lot of stories to tell as he becomes like this not necessarily mercenary, because they don't really want him to kill, they want him to be better than everyone, better than the others.
Okay.
But like he kind of has this rage inside of him, so it's almost like to have him like not kill is like very painful for him. And his Baby Badass's only drawbacks are he's got a soft spot where he was where he's created, and he can't control his bowels, so he does have to wear a diaper. And he's a 33-year-old man that has all the needs of a 33-year-old super soldier, except like he's got these two things holding him back, and it's very frustrating for him.
It's funny, you know how people sort of wish that they can go back in time, and if they can sort of retain what they know but be younger.
Yeah.
I mean, I would hate that to be the case. You go to back in time, and you're the body of a baby, and you can't control your bowels.
You can't control your bowels and be aware of it.
Right,
and it's
right.
very frustrated by it. Yeah. So you definitely need to have him have some like Achilles heels, and those are his two big ones, and the frustration of being in this body. But there's a lot of fun to be had with that too, with the other characters, and that's the other thing that's exciting, is introducing these characters from what's called the Way Underground, and there's also a thing called the Superfluous Six, which is these 6 rejects from Mother that have escaped, and they become part of the Way Underground. And one of them's Dave in Port, which is the Ottoman Empire. He's like a couch human hybrid, so he can ingest people and turn them into like throw pillows and things like that, and just kind of out there side characters that are almost like a spoof of like Marvel characters.
It's so outlandish.
It's a little outlandish. It gets kind of crazy towards the end for sure.
Now, is there like what countries are still around in this world?
Oh, they're all, it's come down to continents.
Okay.
So each kind of area, each continent kind of has their own area that's just kind of like been drawn down to the habitable spaces.
I see.
So I kind of describe it as like if again, it's this Idiocracy meets Game of Thrones type of thing. It's like there's a whole world that can be explored, and having 12 years to kind of to work on it has allowed me to really like world build like that, and it's been great. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot more to come, and I'm excited to kind of like get volume 2 going.
Nice. I guess we can maybe start wrapping up the show. I know that you have something else you have to go to a little bit later.
Yeah.
Where can people find you online?
So both Instagram and Twitter, I have The Baby Badass. I also have my own at Schraderopolis, which is a little more, difficult to remember. But The Baby Badass and Schraderopolis, and then Real Baby Badass on Facebook. And I'm out there. I love talking to people about the book and about other stuff too. So please look it up.
And is there anything else that you'd like our audience to know about that you feel we haven't talked about yet?
Well, if they would kindly forget like some of my answers to your rapid fire questions, I would appreciate it.
Tell you what, we'll have you on again,
okay.
And we can do another set of questions. And
that'd be great. I really appreciate what you guys do, and the Hall H show is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Best of luck to you. I'm looking forward to actually reading the book. I haven't had a chance to take a look at it yet.
Don't be scared, Aaron.
I won't.
All right.
Like I said, I'm looking forward to checking it out, and looking forward to your future projects. And I guess we'll be seeing you. Will you be at Rhineland's event on the 26th of August?
I think so. I think I'll be there this August 26th,
yes.
And then I'm doing Long Beach Comic Con as well.
Okay.
I was able to be lucky enough to be a guest there, and be tabling there as well. And then I think LA Comic Con too, and then maybe New York at the end of the year, and then that's it. But it's been a long year for me. It's like started in Three Rivers Con in Pittsburgh, then Heroes Con, Vegas, Amazing Vegas, here.
Yeah, you've gone to a few cons that I don't think I've heard of yet. I mean, how do you fit all these cons into your schedule?
I knew that because the book came out this year, I wanted to strategically go like at least every other month to certain ones. And I did some research and found out, like, unfortunately I missed Denver this year. I hear Denver's a really, David Pepos, who does Spencer and Locke, said it's an amazing con. So I want to try to go to Denver next year. And hopefully we'll have some other books out, some other things. I don't know if volume 2 will be out yet, but like I want to try to hit some different ones next year too, because I get a lot out of this. It's a lot of fun, and it's just great meeting people and networking and supporting other creators.
Cool. Well, thank you for being on the show here at San Diego Comic-Con, and we look forward to having you on again.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Cool.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, man. Hey everybody, welcome to the Hall H Show podcast. We are at WonderCon 2019, and we have a special guest, my friend David Schrader. He's the creator of an awesome comic book called Baby Badass. It is now live on Kickstarter, right?
Yeah, Baby Badass returns. So
Baby Badass Returns.
It's the second volume.
Right. Yeah, I mean, volume 1 was just crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely a crazy book, but we had a nice little cult following, and it was, a small success for us, and the people that like it seem to really like it. So we wanted to offer a Kickstarter for this first issue of the second volume. So because the second volume won't be done until probably at least the fall, wanted to kind of have something available for people to check it out and keep our foot in the door. Why
don't you get our audience sort of caught up with the status of the storyline?
Yeah, Baby Badass is it's a book about a 33-year-old super soldier, but he's trapped in the body of a baby. He was like a government experiment that went wrong, and he escapes the lab, and he's found in the desert by this like sweet, sexy waitress. She takes him in, and so she kind of rescues him, and then he rescues her, and you find out it's the year 2043, and the future is like totally effed up. And it's been described as Mad Max meets Idiocracy, and with a killer baby. And it's a really fun, crazy book, but it's basically just a sci-fi grindhouse, action comedy.
And how's your con going so far?
The con is going good. I like WonderCon. It's very it's a good size. It's not overwhelming. San Diego was the first time for me last year, and I was prepared for it to be overwhelming, and it wasn't, because I was prepared for it until the last day. When you have to do those baby steps when you're walking behind people all day because it's so crowded. WonderCon,
if they're on their phone,
or they're just kind of like mulling around like zombies, it can get to be a little much when you're trying to go from place to place. Like last year, I was trying to get a few things signed, so I had to be one end of the hall, then back at the other end of the hall, and then when you're behind like masses of people, it starts to wear on you a little bit. But last year, I had a couple panels, and I did a signing at the Action Lab booth, so I didn't have to table, which was great, but just maneuvering around started to get a little much. But WonderCon for me is like just a good size. It's just the right size.
Today's a Saturday. Yesterday you were here and you had a panel as well.
Yeah, I was on. Rylan Grant puts together a couple great panels, but one of them is this one was called "Kickstarting Your Comic," and he had on Charlie Stickney, Russell Nolte, Christy Shin, and who else was on it? I'll think of it in a second. But these guys and girls are really good at it. They know how to do a Kickstarter. This is my first Kickstarter, so I have some experience to share, and it's also live. So it's kind of ongoing. But the fact is that these guys have done it, and they've done it successfully, and they had a lot of good insight to share.
Is there anything about what's going on? In Baby Badass Returns, that you can sort of tease, to our audience, that you don't give anything, too much away, but something you can whet their appetite with. Right.
The good thing about the Kickstarter is that there's tiers, even like digital tiers, where you can get the first volume, so you can get caught up. I think like for $10, you get all the digital tiers, including the new one. But basically, we leave off where they kind of met the resistance in this future world. It's really, really awful. It's called The Way Underground. And
I sort of remember how the volume 1 ended.
Yeah, there's some people say it ended with a bang. There's a little bit of sexuality, which is fine. It's very like it's a lot like French comics. Some of that, but there's some of that, and then we see The Way Underground, which is this resistance movement that has like a plan to try to like restore some sanity to the upside world.
Mm-hmm. And how far in advance have you sort of planned everything?
Overall, there's a lot of plans. I've had a lot of time to think about this. Me and my co-creator Christian Horn, I had the idea in 2006, and we started playing with it more and more. And he did some character sketches, and then we said, let's do a webcomic. And then the webcomic kind of fizzled because Christian started it and then restarted it, and then he had his own baby in life. And so then I got Tim Larson involved, and Tim did the artwork for the first volume, and he really gave it a great like raw grindhouse look. I think it served the first volume really well, and that story had been set for a while. So one of the benefits to having a comic take like 10 years or 12 years to get done is that you have a lot of time to think about the world building, and this one in particular, there's just a lot of great characters, a lot of fun characters. There's a group called the Superfluous Six, which is these kind of anti-superheroes that have these arbitrary powers, and it's a lot of comic relief usually. So it's a dystopian grindhouse comedy. There's not a lot of post-apocalyptic comedies out there, so we kind of have our own little niche. And the world itself is pretty big, because each continent has coalesced after this awful post-apocalyptic turn of events, and there's only about 10% of the population left anyhow. So now there's a 1% of the 10%, and there's a digital talisman called Adasia, which is this device that in the future pretty much does and has everything you need on it. And it's kind of like where we're going with technology, and eventually that turns on itself, and these things are kind of like key to recovering knowledge. So there's a lot of stuff going on. It sounds like odd for a story about a killer baby, but it's kind of a mashup too. This whole story is like a mashup of like tons of pop culture that I've absorbed over my lifetime.
That's an interesting life you've
well, yeah. Well, but I mean, just the feel of things, you know, like I describe people to people that like, the above ground world is very dry and desolate and just kind of depressing. And, you know, there's a lot of violence, and that's almost like the Star Wars aspect. And then below ground is like cool, calm, rational people that are a little ineffectual, but it's basically like the Star Trek world. So you have the hot colors and the cool colors, and then those worlds kind of collide.
Which world would you want to live in?
I would want to live in the cool color world, and that's a more diverse and more intellectually stimulating world. It's not just driven by passion and violence and you know, short-term thinking. And I think, you know, there's some social commentary probably involved in this odd little comic, but it's not too in your face. It's very much kind of like just layered throughout. And I think, you know, you can just kind of extrapolate where we could go with our worst instincts, especially like politically and socially. And that's maybe the world that is Baby Badass, but I want to keep hope alive too. And the hope aspect is that they become mercenaries for the way underground. And it's that, it's the classic good versus evil, but it's also just funny. You know? If you don't laugh, you'll cry. And I think that's part of this comic's charm, is that, you know, as bad as things sometimes seem, that there is still hope.
Now, I think I remember from our last conversation at San Diego Comic-Con, you said you come from a comedy background, right?
Yeah, I when I moved out to LA, I was 19. I was doing stand-up comedy, and I performed at all the great venues. But it was a tough existence, and it's not something that I wanted to continue with. So I started making films. My first feature was called NoHo, and it was in 1995. So I was like a 24-year-old kid, and since then, I've you know, made some other features. I've had some things sold, some options, but eventually I got into improv comedy, which I liked a lot more than stand-up, because stand-up, the stress of it every day, you know, before a performance, my stomach would be in knots. And I couldn't even like eat. But with improv, you know, you're sharing the stage with other people, and you're just playing off of each other, and it was a much more relaxed and organic kind of environment. I like that a lot more. And eventually, you know, you make a few films here and there, but the creative bug kind of like bites you, and you want to do more. So I started doing shorts, and I've written and produced and directed a lot of short films, little short comedy films. And we have a company called Highbrow that me and my partner Matt Friedberg run, and we've done some commercials and some other shorts, but mainly we just try to do pop culture spoofs and things like that.
Nice.
And so if you check out our site on Highbrow on YouTube, you can see some of our shorts.
I'll definitely check that out. I don't know if you know, but I'm the I'm one of the brand ambassadors for the International Mobile Film Festival.
I did not know that.
So
now I do.
It'd be kind of cool if one day you can maybe film a movie or a short with your phone and maybe submit it to.
Well, we could also submit some of our recent stuff. We just did one called Back to the Bad, Breaking to the Future, which is a mashup of obviously Back to the Future and Breaking the Bad. A friend of mine has a DeLorean time machine. I was like, I got to use this in something, and it's basically a case of mistaken identity. Doc Brown thinks Jesse is Marty, and Marty thinks Doc Brown is Mr. White, and we use the car. It's funny because that guy's car is part of a documentary called The Fastest DeLorean in the World, or The Fastest DeLorean. It's on Amazon. You can see it on
88.8 miles.
88. He actually did. He broke the record. He broke the speed record with the DeLorean, and they're notoriously like kind of crappy cars as far as the engines and things like that. So it's a really interesting story. And the day we shot that film, we shot everything else, and we were waiting for the car to arrive, and he called me. He's like, yeah, the car blew up. I'm sorry, I can't make it. I said, what do you mean the car blew up? He says, it's on fire. It's on the freeway on fire. And sure enough, he sent me a picture and some video of his car in flames on the freeway, and we were totally screwed because we're like, well, we need this car for the shoot, and someone drove by and they happened to have an extinguisher in the car, and they put it out, and I said, well, do you mind towing it? And we could still use it in the shoot. So in the shoot, we pushed it into the scene, and we still used it, and it kind of looked good because he was supposed to be coming back from a really horrible future, and it worked out. But yeah, that's that.
That's incredible. Yeah, I mean, I think I haven't seen a DeLorean in such a long time. I think I remember at one of the conventions I went to, they had it outside, but
I think in Long Beach they had one.
Yeah, okay, maybe that was
this
it.
This guy runs a company that I think is an affiliation of people. Believe it or not, like all over the country, there's people that have restored DeLoreans and then retrofitted them to look exactly like this wasn't just a DeLorean. This was a replica of the Back to the Future time machine, like inside and out. So shooting in it was really fun because wherever you shot, it looked like, wow, you're actually in it, and it gave it a different level of realism.
Mm-hmm. I guess let's go back to Baby Badass. I mean, this time around, for the start of the second volume, what are some challenges that you sort of faced this time around that are different than the first?
Well, we have a new artist, Andy Taylor, who's great. He did Bigfoot Sword of the Earthman, which was kind of a hit for Action Lab, and he's an alumnus of the Kubert School, and he's just got a really great style, and it fit well. It kind of brings along what we had before with Tim and kind of pushes it into a new direction. And the challenges were just time, because it as everyone that makes comics knows, it does take time sometimes, like to get the artwork and to get these things done. So part of the reason I wanted to do the Kickstarter was to have something to bridge the gap between the next volume. Mm-hmm. We're actually also in talks to have this turn into an animated series. So two pretty big comedy producers are involved with this right now. I can't say too much about it, but it is exciting because we're working on it right now, and I guess that would be in development, and it was kind of made to be an animated series.
Oh wow, yeah, I can see that. I mean, how far along the process is it?
For that,
yeah.
We're in the early stages, but I'm actually working on writing the pilot, and that's a challenge because the first book, if anyone's read Baby Badass, is really grindhouse. It's really raw, over-the-top violence, and a lot of it is kind of set in the same space. So, when you introduce characters in, say, an animated series, you kind of need to push that along a little further. So you do that maybe with a few flashbacks here and there, or you develop the characters a little more than they are obviously in the books. But it's a fun challenge. It's something that I'm looking forward to. This is something that, when I had the idea and had Christian involved, we had pitched to Spike and Comedy Central and a few other places, but it was before it was a comic.
I see.
And these days it seems like something needs to be a property
IP,
before it gets developed.
Uh-huh.
And, that was part of the reason we wanted to do the comic. I wanted to actually have a proof of concept that this is the story. This is where it's going. It might not have the whole story here, but you can see where it's going. And I think we filled in the gaps with the series development to kind of lay out the trajectory of the first 3 seasons.
Mm-hmm. Can you sort of maybe dive into the whole pitching process?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've done my share of it. My old writing partner, Christy Stratton, she's actually on an animated series right now. She wrote on King of the Hill, and she was on Modern Family and some other stuff. But we had pitched some film projects, and that's a lot of back and forth. You would go in, you would talk to the executives. They would pitch you a few ideas, and you'd incorporate that. You'd go back and you'd rewrite it. And we would do things where you just rewrite the script like 5 to 10 times and not get paid for it. And that's frustrating because sometimes when you know that like this is a good concept, it just needs to get made. And a lot of times in Hollywood, it is people having meetings just to have meetings. Like they got to fill up their schedule to have meetings. So when you realize that you're part of that process, it can be a little frustrating. But one of the things I've always believed in is like just you know, you got to like keep going back. You got to persevere and put yourself out there and be aware that there's going to be a lot of rejection and a lot of disappointment. Yeah. But the pitch process, it can be exhilarating and fun when you find the right people. And like in this case with Gary Mann and KP Anderson, these guys they're awesome. And KP in particular has like a really good feel for like comics and post-apocalyptic comics and comedy. And so it's kind of a perfect match. So these guys are top notch. So I'm really glad to be working with them and see where it goes.
How do you find time to do this project? I mean, pitching and doing the comic book. I mean, I'm assuming you're still working full time.
I do work full time, but then in my spare time,
did you win the lotto since the last time I saw you?
You know what though? I compare myself to some of these other writers, like I mentioned Russell Nolte earlier. And Terry Mayo, by the way, is the other guy that was on the panel.
Terry's
you know Terry,
awesome.
right?
I know
Terry is I call him the hardest working man in comics. And
he's want to talk about Terry. Like he has 7 kids, right? But
7.
But
you heard that right, people. 7.
But you should
7 boys, right?
Probably.
Aren't they all boys?
I'm not sure about the latest one. Oh yeah.
I think
it is.
all
Yeah, they're all boys. They're boys.
Just like he's got a football team.
But every so often, I'll just like change the number to like 13 or something like that.
Because what's the difference? At that point, it's like you might as well. Terry is a great guy, and so he was on the panel too. Why was I mentioning the panel?
The Kickstarting panel.
I don't know what we were talking about just before. I remembered Terry was on the.
I guess you're just talking about people who have other things going on.
Oh yeah, like look at that guy. Like I you know, and Russell, who like he released like 13 novels in like 2 years or something, or shorter time span. And
yeah, he's pretty prolific.
You can't compare yourself sometimes because you will go nuts. I do what I do. I try to do the best I can, and I try to have a plan. But I definitely beat myself up over my productivity. Like, you know, they say writers write every day, and to be honest, I don't write every day. And I wish I could, and I go more in spurts. So when I'm like, you know, a lot of times I'll just write page after page after page, and then other days you're just blocked. So,
so what do you do when you're sort of hit that?
when I'm blocked?
Yeah, I
watch TV. No, and like sometimes this stuff will come to you at night, and if you don't write it down, you'll lose it. And so, a lot of times, this is the way I used to write. It sounds kind of crazy, but like I would think about the project before I go to sleep. I would sit there and think about it, and get into the scene, and then I would actually dream scenarios and dream dialogue and dream things that actually like worked. Almost like a movie in your head. And in the morning, whatever stuck I knew was probably good enough to use, and I would put it down. And a lot of times I'd get out of it that way. Just kind of like put yourself in that mind frame before you go to bed, and that it just kind of comes to you. Just finished a horror script with a friend of mine called Clay Adams. He's a really nice guy, and it's called Nightmare. It's a really fun, crazy script. It's kind of set in the 80s. And this is something that I had the idea for like 20 years ago, and I never forgot it. And we just actively said, let's try to do it again.
Good thing you wrote it down.
I wrote it down because the idea was so like, why hasn't this been done? And it hasn't, you know. And we just finished it. We're going to try to get it out there to spec. But if it doesn't go that way, we make it ourselves. It's the kind of thing that you can actually do yourself. So that's also something as a writer that if you want to do it yourself, you may always have a kind of an outlet to do that. Comics is a great way for that as well. Like you have a movie idea and you can't afford to do it, you can probably make a comic out of it, and someone might buy it and make a movie.
Speaking of comics, are there any other comics that you're reading right now?
Right now, the thing is, I'm buying a lot of comics. I'm not necessarily reading a lot of comics. I have a giant stack. of books. My friend David Pepos has a new book out called Going to the Chapel, and he's got Spencer Locke 2 coming out. So those are on order, and I'm looking forward to that. Ryland Grant also with Aberrant. Mm-hmm. He's got a new comic called Banjax, and I try to read my friend's stuff first, and get that on top of the pile. But there's just a giant pile that I can't even think of right now. I'm trying to finish the Game of Thrones books, believe it or not. I thought I had this idea that I could finish them before the last season started, and I'm finishing up book 2, so I don't think I'm going to make it book wise. But me and my wife did watch the whole series again for the second time around.
I haven't even started.
You've never started it?
No.
Get on that. Seriously, it's like the best show it's ever been on.
I hear that.
But now's the time to do it.
Yeah.
Start with season 1. Episode 1, and you have to at least get to the end of the first season to decide if you don't want to continue.
I've seen episodes here and there at my friend's house. Just you got
to start at the beginning, and then get invested. That's great.
What kind of besides Game of Thrones? What else are you watching?
I watched a lot of the Marvel stuff, even though they're wrapping it up now on Netflix.
Yeah, that's kind of sad. How
it is kind of sad. I guess because Disney's got their new app coming out, but I don't know how that's going to work. I think they may scrap it.
I think at the very least, they should at least give them a chance to wrap all the shows up.
Right. Believe it or not, I started The Walking Dead, and I think I'm on season 7 now. So just a couple months ago, I just said I'm going to binge it because my friend got me the book. Yeah. My friend Kristen Horn got me the first omnibus, and my wife doesn't like zombie stuff. She gets kind of creeped out by it. So I had to find time on my own to start binging it. And I just couldn't get over how many bad ideas Rick has in Walking Dead. But I guess that makes the show go. It's like, if he didn't have bad ideas, they'd be living in peace and harmony right now.
Yeah, I stopped watching after Glenn died.
Oh, that's right. That was pretty sad. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm finishing that up. I'm catching up with some older shows, but I don't know. Me and my wife watched shows together like This Is Us, and Catastrophe on Amazon Prime is really, really good. That's Rob Delaney's show, and it's really funny. There's half hours.
There's so many shows out there.
Too many shows.
Jeez,
it's a lot of good stuff out there.
There is, yeah. I don't know if you watched Umbrella Academy.
I started the first one, but because I was finishing these other things, I'm like, okay, I want to kind of go through straight. It had a nice look to it. It kind of reminded me almost of the sheen of it was like Watchmen or X, the X-Men, some of that had that feel to it.
Definitely has that flavor.
Yeah. Did you finish it?
I did finish it.
You liked it?
It was 10 episodes. I liked it.
I'll definitely finish it. I just haven't. Once I start it, then I'll finish it. I need to kind of start it again.
Yeah. I was going to ask, since we're starting to go back into space.
Yes.
What would you put in the sort of, if you had a chance to put in the maybe on the golden record, if you had the ability to add top 3 movies to represent Earth,
represent Earth.
What would you put on there?
To represent Earth, or how I would like Earth to be.
I guess we can do. We can do both.
I put 2001: Space Odyssey. That should be in there.
Yeah,
that's kind of a no-brainer, right? Mm-hmm. Personally, I put The Big Lebowski.
Oh, nice!
Because it just
with the recipe for a White Russian, right?
Of course. I mean, I think that could go a long way towards establishing peace with aliens. The dude's mantra and just how he goes about things. And then the third movie, there's just so many good ones out there. I guess Citizen Kane, because then you can say, well, this is considered the best movie.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then see what happens.
Nice. Those are all good options. I need to watch Citizen Kane again. It's been a while.
Yeah, I had an idea for a show one time called Remaking Citizen Kane, and it was a show about a studio in their attempts to remake the movie and how it just fails spectacularly, just because everything seems to be getting remade now.
Obviously, how supportive is your wife with your endeavors?
She's very supportive, and I got very lucky. Yeah. I think I know a lot of people out there that especially something that seems as silly as
writing comic books sometimes can seem. She's super supportive, and my wife's a chef. She's an advocate for like sustainability, and like she travels as an ambassador for Oxfam America. She's a Sisters on the Planet for Oxfam. She's been to the UN to speak like at these conferences.
Wow, that's incredible.
She's really impressive. And so I actually made a joke the other day, like, you know, she's at the UN speaking about like you know, sustainability and third world food programs, and I'm working on the second volume of a book about a killer baby. So we're an interesting couple, but she's super supportive of a lot of my endeavors, and you know, that's all you can ask for, because you know, I support her, she supports me, and we're like a team together.
Nice. It's always good when you can find that
the right person.
The right person, yeah.
Yeah, we're actually coming up on 10 years our anniversary, and like next week.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, I know. 10 years. It's amazing. It goes fast.
Jeez. What kind of food does she specialize in?
She's Latina. She's Venezuelan. She was born in Chicago, but you know, her parents are Venezuelan. She's raised in Venezuela, and she came back to the U.S. when she was about 25. So she's got like international kind of flair, but she loves Asian food, and she does like, maybe I would say like kind of a mixture, but a lot of healthy cooking.
It's almost like Peruvian, like
Peruvian. Yeah. She loves Peru. In fact, she staged for Ricardo Zarate, who has several restaurants in LA. Is a really big chef, and she was on MasterChef. My wife was a long time ago for season 2. She was in the top 10, and her dish that she cooked was camarones saltados.
I love saltados.
So she loves Peruvian food. So she cooks like I would say almost like a Latin Asian, Pan Asian kind of flair, but she's also having the healthy cooking and cooking. She's actually not really eating meat now for the last year or so. So
interesting.
She's got that healthy kick going, and I benefit from it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, here's to healthy 10 more years for you both, for the both of you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
What else? Is there anything else that you can tell us about Baby Badass Returns?
Just that there's a Kickstarter going on right now. So if you want to check it out, like I said, there's lower level tiers where you can just get digital stuff for $5 or $10, and it's babybadass.com/Kickstarter is the URL, and we've got another 19 days, something like that going. So it goes to April 18th.
Yeah.
Dan Mendoza is actually doing a couple covers. You know, Dan from Zombie Tramp. He's doing 2 variant covers for us, and they're exclusive only to the Kickstarter.
You also know... I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, Tony Donnelly actually did the main cover for the Kickstarter, and it's a Steranko inspired.
Yeah, I think I saw that.
It's really, really cool, and that's also just a Kickstarter exclusive.
How do you know my friend Orlando?
I must have met him through you online. And so Orlando, or how do you say his name? Arocena.
Yeah.
He's such a nice guy, and his work just blew me away. So I immediately followed him on Instagram and all this stuff, because I think Aaron reposts a lot of stuff. So when he reposts stuff, I tend to like it and check it out and everything. And so Mexifunk is his...
for our audience who doesn't know Orlando, he's a vector artist.
He's like the vector artist,
he's
right?
Awesome. He's the god. I mean, he showed me when I first met him. It was at Poster Posse headquarters in Orange County, and the way I had to sort of describe him was, you know, what awesome vector artists can do in like 6 days,
right?
He can do in 6 hours.
No, it's amazing, and like he's I think he won the average, like the Clio Award last year, and we got a Zamboni driving by. But Orlando's stuff is incredible. And so I just asked him, I said, would you mind maybe doing a print or a cover for us? And I said, take your time, because I know you're busy. He does big international like advertising campaigns, and like he did something for Marvel recently.
Yeah, I think at the Dark Phoenix panel yesterday, they had an exclusive poster that he created for.
Yeah, he did a print for us. So that's available. That was one of the stretch goals, and it's this awesome print. It's called the Virgin and Child 2043, because it's Joey and Baby Badass in the classic Madonna and Child image. And it's amazing. Like, he blew me away with it. So that's available. And then eventually I think we might make that one of our variant covers when Volume 2 does come out. Yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah. I think he's living in Colombia right now.
He's in Colombia. He's in Colombia.
I just wish that we can hang out. You know.
How did you meet him? How do you know him?
Online. Well, you know, when we first started Hall H, we were sort of looking how we could sort of what our mission would be.
Right.
Because, both Alex and myself we're so busy that we have hallh.com, but we don't have enough time to put into it to cover all the mainstream stuff.
Right.
So we kind of thought we'll flip the script and we'll sort of put the attention back on the creators and artists. Because, for both Alex and myself, going to San Diego Comic-Con was about going to Artist Alley. That was Comic-Con for us.
That's where the action is, honestly.
Yeah. So I went online looking for people that I could follow and repost, and Orlando was literally one of the first ones I came across. He was doing him and the Poster Posse were doing tribute art for one of the Planet of the Apes movies.
Right.
So that was the first piece that I saw from him. So,
it is so unique, isn't it? Like his, and then when he does the work in progress videos, it's so fun to see. Like,
it is.
Well, not fun. I mean, it's probably not fun for him. It's a lot of work. Like, but it's fun to see like the amount of work that goes into this vector art. And
his process is, it's not like, because vector is pretty much points, mathematically calculated points,
right,
and lines. But the way he does it is he sort of paints his it's just incredible.
Yeah, it's spectacular.
Yeah.
So I was really. Did you dig the print he did for us?
Yeah, it was awesome,
really cool.
Man.
Yeah, and I was blown away. I think I even said in the Kickstarter, like, I don't know how he started slumming for us, but we're glad he did.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, for those of our audience who are listening to this right now, go check it out. I mean, right after this podcast, I'm gonna go on there and I'm gonna pledge. So
check it out.
Yeah,
catch up.
Yeah, where can people find you online, David?
I am at Schraderopolis, my name, and then Opolis, for both Twitter and Instagram, and then The Baby Badass for both Twitter and Instagram, and then Facebook's Real Baby Badass, because apparently someone else had The Baby Badass, but they didn't use it. So yeah, Schraderopolis and The Baby Badass, you can find us. We're pretty active online. Cool.
I know we gave props to your wife. Is there anybody out there that you want to give a superhero shout out to?
Yeah, Chef Ale Schrader, if you want to check her out, because she's doing really good work, and she's actually in talks to maybe host some shows as well, like to do some travel cooking shows and things like that. And she's a really nice person. Cool. So shout that out.
Anybody else?
Let's see, Rylan Grant, because he put me on that panel and got me down here this weekend, and David Pepos, he's a great guy. Orlando, as we talked about, Mexafunk. Check out his stuff.
Mexafunk.com.
That's right. And if I'm forgetting anybody, I apologize.
Yeah, I mean, definitely Rylan. Rylan's good peeps. I mean, he, I sort of messaged him the other day saying that I was asking him advice on how to sort of submit for a panel at San Diego Comic-Con.
Right.
And he said that you sort of have to be recommended.
Right.
So he said he would put a good word in for me. So
you should definitely do that.
Yeah. So
I think it's like with those. I mean, they're looking for. I mean, it's just they need stuff because it's just getting bigger and bigger. So they gotta keep it going. But yeah, you should definitely get a panel.
Yeah. I mean, so
I'd be on it if you want.
Yeah. Awesome. We'll look forward to that. Is there anything else that we missed that you'd like our audience to know about?
No, that's it, man. Thank you very much for having me on. Viva the Hall H show.
It's always awesome to see you.
All right, dude.
Thanks David.
Again. Appreciate it.
All right. Peace. Cheers. Talk to you later.
Thank you so much for listening to the Hall H Show podcast, where we love showcasing independent comic book creators like David Schrader. If you support our mission to be the voice of independent creators, we would love a rating, hopefully 5 stars, and a comment on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, please share our episodes using the hashtag HallHShow. Peace, cheers, and please make it a point to visit Artist Alley and Small Press at all the comic conventions you plan on going to this year.